Yes, Mommy.
Listen to Mommy for a sec, okay?
Okay. Okay, Mommy.
Okay. I absolutely adore my good boy.
Thank you, Mommy.
There's not a single thing I would ever change about you.
Thank you, Mommy.
Every little piece is absolutely perfect, baby.
I love you, Mommy.
Even the pieces you consider flaws.
What? Whoa! 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 Pause! 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 Holy crap! You scared me. What was? Okay, no. Well, you certainly did not just catch me listening to Mommy comforting ASMR to go to sleep to. Okay? Absolutely not. And while I'm upset and scared, you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? You had to watch part 1, and now you want to watch part 2, which means I gotta make part 2 for this thing that no one asked me to do. Now, what you're probably gonna find about part 2 of this movie's ranked thing, this bullshit, is that part 2 is not gonna be as funny as part 1. Because part 1 was literally nightmare after nightmare after nightmare that I had to be funny and find jokes to get through. Part 2, this is all like, hey, I liked it. It was cool. It's not gonna be as funny or as entertaining. I'm gonna try though. A wise man once said, "It's easier to explain why a machine is broken than why a machine is working." And I like to think that applies here. So that's all I gotta say right here. Please enjoy. I feel like Clown in a Cornfield kind of had everything going against it, at least from my perspective. But ultimately, it wasn't bad. I was relieved to learn that this was based on a horror novel, which I haven't read yet as of writing this, but it seems like a take on those 80s horror nasties books that were cheaply produced, which I actually find incredibly charming. And yeah, this movie does feel like a translation of that kind of horror, and I can appreciate it for that. Well, yeah, I wouldn't say this movie is necessarily good. It wasn't a boring dredge of an experience like I thought it would be. Nothing notable about the performances or cinematography or any technical aspects of the filmmaking really, but I like how pulpy and kind of ironic this all felt. I didn't really know what to make of this one just based on the previews because it seemed all over the place. There's a baby, there's no baby, it's the past, but it's also the future. This is gonna tie into Earth 616 somehow. Like, what? So I was going in pretty blank besides the post-credits of Thunderbolts, which we'll get to. And what I found was, it was okay. I mean, I don't really see why some people are calling this peak, because I feel like even in the grand scheme of the MCU, which I've had very limited exposure to, all things considered, this would probably be like a C or C-, right? It did end up being kind of all over the place, but every different beat it hit feels like it has already either been done or was predictable anyways. I don't know, it just wasn't giving that hard. But I also guess that 2 steps before your giant Avengers event, which already has a lot riding on it, you don't want to go too crazy with things. I thought Galactus and Shah LaBeouf were cool, and I thought the gravity of sacrificing a baby to a space god was pretty heavy and crazy, but ultimately, I don't think Fantastic Four really did anything exceptional or special or fantastic, especially compared to the other 2 major superhero releases this year. Well, 3 I guess, but I didn't watch Captain America, and if I did, I assume I would not have liked it. I actually really disliked Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn's performances. Honestly, all 4 of them weren't giving too much, but those 2 just seemed pretty checked out for some strange reason. While I thought the retro future aesthetic was cute and kind of unique, this movie just had nothing very interesting to do or say either. It was almost kinda good though. Also, real talk for a sec, can we please stop with the pump fake character death scenes? No music, Mr. Fantastic is giving Sue CPR in a situation where I'm not sure if CPR would even help. He's crying, everyone is just staring, and then the magical baby saves her. I watched this one 2 times, and the second time I had to physically leave the theater during this scene because it was so fucking cringe. Anyways. The premise reminded me of like Barbarian or low-key like Blink Twice. I liked the first half of Bone Lake just fine. I thought the sexual intrigue and the interpersonal stuff was pretty interesting, and I was really wondering where it was gonna go. But when I found out where it was going, I just got kind of bored. Besides a Video Nasties level plot twist that the 2 villains were incest siblings fucking each other, nothing about the final act really wowed me or grabbed me as much as it realistically should have. I did like the very ending though. It was a nice note to end on, but overall, Bone Lake suffers on the back end because it feels like when the intrigue is spent, it doesn't really have feet to stand on. The acting was good, but I was so distracted how leading actress Maddie Hasson looked and sounded just like Florence Pugh. Like when I see the trailer, I really thought it was her, and I was shocked to find out that it wasn't. Alright, y'all sit down for a second. I have some explaining to do. This is definitely the most confounding movie I've seen this year. I really didn't know how to feel about it for a while after I watched it. 2 is my favorite game in the series, so how this movie incorporated the elements of that game was important to me and would be a qualifying factor for it. And in that aspect, I think it did pretty well. I like that the puppet is our main antagonist and that there's an emphasis on the toy animatronics. Even if I never cared for that class of the animatronic gang, they're important parts of the second game, so it was apropos. And while the Wizards, my absolute favorite version of the animatronics, were really only given one scene to shine, I still thought they were done well, even if my absolute GOAT Withered Bonnie was infamously shorted here.
Stop pissing me off.
Anyways, with all that said, what the fuck happened here? Realistically, if I'm just taking writing and plot into account, this one should be way lower on the list. Like, maybe like bottom 5 of the year. I'm not kidding. The script is hot garbage. I wouldn't say it's quite as bad as most critics made it out to be, but a lot of things just didn't make sense, and other things were so awkward and forced, and most other things were just pointless. It's like they had a handful of ideas they wanted to do, but didn't flesh any of them out so they could fit it all into an hour and 40-minute movie. And that's kind of my final reflection about these movies so far. The lore of FNAF is awful. Scott seemed to have changed his mind about the story so many times with each game and tried to pass it off as some stroke of genius. So, in deciding to dumb it all down for these movies, he's kind of exposed the flaws in his own work, because now we're seeing even clearer how convoluted this shit is, as if we didn't know already. I don't know if I like that these movies are only for the fans. A good writer would have found a balance between making a good FNAF movie and just making a good movie. We're off the rails now as of the ending of this one, and I'm ready to see how the next movie is going to handle all of these haphazard, half-baked plot points. I mean, we got Springtrap, we got the puppet, we got so like I said, this should realistically be a lot lower on this list, but there's something so compelling about the mess they've made so far, and the huge mess they have coming with the next movie. It's a disaster. Yeah, I know. But it's an interesting disaster that's connected with a series I actually do care about. There were a couple factors going in that led me to believe this would be a POS, or at the very least really boring, but I was surprised to find that while this movie didn't excel at anything, it was surprisingly decent. First off, it looks beautiful, which I wasn't expecting, with this really hazy June heat kind of vibe that made some shots almost hypnotic. The performances were very solid all around. Some moments made me uncomfortable in a good way, and the ending wasn't what I thought it would be, but it still worked for me besides being a little dull to get there. I was particularly struck by the main character and the emotional situation she was in. She's just let everything fall apart because she can't bring herself to do anything about it. Like, that really struck a chord with me in a deep way. However, with all that said, The Woman in the Yard fails to do anything particularly interesting with its approach to grief and how it affects a family. That's the main problem I had, and what holds it back pretty hard for me. I don't think this movie really does anything interesting or special with its gimmick, and you can see the metaphor a mile away. I wish the approach in the final act was stronger and more subversive or creative too. But you know, I almost actually like this one. I have to give it some credit. I almost feel like I can't review this one without reviewing the first one. To make a long fucking story short, I put a whole black phone up my ass. No, I thought the first Black Phone was a well-done period piece, if you want to call it that. That focused on the serial killer, Warrens-esque mystic crime-solving craze that swept the 60s through the 80s. I know it's based on a short story, but it's still such a good idea. Black Phone 2 decides to dive deep into the mystic, subconscious dream stuff that was a little more supplementary in the first movie. I don't mind handing this one off to Gwen. She was an okay character in the first one, but focusing on all of that left the plot feeling gobbledygook-ish and like a lot of nothing was happening. It felt like a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I also enjoyed the atmosphere, the setting, and the lighting. I don't think I liked anything about the final act though. It got so stupid by the end in ways the first movie didn't. So, I don't know, while the last 30 minutes didn't work well for me, I enjoyed the first 2/3 well enough. It was also unexpectedly, so graphic at times, which definitely spiced up the mystery and freakiness of everything. Overall, it was okay. I kind of don't want them to make a third one, because how in the hell are they gonna find a way to bring back the Grabber again? Just let him be! Also, rest in peace to James Ranson. He did a really great job in both of these movies. Together was way more basic than I expected it to be. I guess after watching body horror like The Substance last year, the bar has kind of been raised so high that while this could have been a gem in, say, 2020 or something, nowadays this is run-of-the-mill ridiculous horror. I think that really says something about where the genre is at and how many steps forward creators have taken in terms of ideas, filmmaking, directing, and expressions. In Together's case, it's like, once you get it, and there isn't much more to it otherwise. And honestly, both of our lead actors are just not it here. Like, it was bothering me how much I disliked their performances. It's cool that they cast a real couple to play these roles, but what the hell are they doing? With all that said, Together was still okay. There were some creepy moments here and there, and the sound design of all things was really nice, but I just wish it went harder. I'm surprised I don't have much more to say.
Shout. 21. Shout. Shout. Shout.
Yeah, this was indubitably a Final Destination film. So our first Final Destination movie in years, after multiple pitches were cycled through, and ultimately they decided to remind us of why the series has been gone for so long. Maybe it's because without some new perspective to do it from, there isn't much more interesting you can do with this concept anymore. But with that said, it's not like this wasn't entertaining. There's this built-in tension in every movie in this series that just tickles me to no end. Yes, it did ring pretty hollow here, unfortunately, but it tried. I don't know, I just think it's kind of not outdated, but the series really needed something more invigorating than this if they wanted to stay relevant. I really like the old idea of this one centering around a group of paramedics, and even the weird period piece idea that was pitched a while ago would have been neat too. I don't have too much to say about the movie itself. Like I said, it is certainly a Final Destination movie, but there's something to be said about franchise management here. This just didn't do it, but it clicked my brain buttons, and in that way, it actually did do its job pretty well. I mean, shit, I'm not alone. It's like The Conjuring Last Rites, where it randomly made the most money in the entire series so far. So we're getting another one, but they'd better do something cool with it or I'm just gonna get pissed. I'd rank it above 4 and 1, on par with 3, but below 5 and 2.
Hey, I found a dirty old penny on the ground earlier.
Oh nice. What did you do with it?
I threw it into the wind.
You what?
What?
Okay, first of all, the mint stopped making pennies, so those are going to be valuable soon. And second of all, throwing a penny is what started all the problems in this Final Destination movie.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying we're going to get hit by a train, or a building is going to collapse on us, or something unimaginable is going to happen.
Oklahoma, I hate to remind you that Final Destination is a fictional film series. Lock in.
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah. Category 4. Me like.
Oh, Looney Tunes, my beloved. I was so stoked for this one. A 2D hand-drawn Looney Tunes movie in the big 2025. Dude, fuck yes. And while there's a lot to appreciate here, I think the unfortunate thing about this one is that the plot just wasn't all there. If you didn't know the plot ahead of time, you'd probably assume that it was going to be about Daffy Duck and Porky Pig teaming up to earn enough money to fix their fucked up house. And that was definitely the best stuff in the movie. Like, them trying to keep a bunch of different jobs was so good and could have easily been what the whole movie was about. But no. We had to get aliens, and honestly, things just kind of fell apart a bit from there. It felt like the jokes weren't flowing after a while, like they'd spent all their goodwill in the first 30 or 40 minutes or so. I mean, it is what it is, and I value a lot of what this movie's doing just by existing, but I wish it had followed a different direction. Still, this was a very solid animated comedy, and a nice little moment for movies this last year. Hey now, this is what dreams are made of. So everything I'm about to say, I'm saying as someone who's never seen a Paddington film. or read a Paddington book. Why, this is delightful. Well, I suppose this is a somewhat standard kids adventure film in terms of plot and structure. There's something so charming about Paddington. He's optimistic, he's goofy, and he has a great heart. This movie is just so pure from start to finish. I can't help but enjoy a nice break from mindless horror, gore, uncomfortability, and trauma every once in a while. However, even without having seen the previous two movies, I can tell that not everyone's hearts were in this one all the way. From the actors, the writers, and even the voice of Paddington seemed a little checked out. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, those kids are growing up and probably don't want to do this anymore. It's sad, but I could tell. It sounds like they're making another one, but I would tread carefully perhaps. But I still liked it. Not enough to go back and watch the previous two, but it was a delightful taste sensation.
No happiness in my videos.
Opus was getting really bad reviews, so I kept that in mind when I was watching, and I only sort of understood why by the end. I'll start negatively. There are some pretty heinous pacing issues here, primarily in the first half. Everything with the setup needed an extra 10-ish minutes, but it feels like instead it sets up some bare character stuff, tells you the idea, then throws you right in. I don't know if that was intentional or just poor editing choices, something in the script or what, but it was a bit rough at first. Once it gets going, it's pretty typical, and overall, Opus isn't anything you can't get from other similar movies like Midsummer, The Menu, or shit, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That sounds random, but I swear to God it makes sense if you've seen it. Also, this might be the hottest take in this video, but Io Adebari was like awful. Like, she was so bad here. Did she not like the script or something? The way she played this role, it felt like she was playing someone playing this role. Like, there was such a bizarre degree of separation in her performance. I don't know what happened there. John Malkovich really should have given his performance more as well. I don't understand the praise these two got in this movie. That was like the main praise that this one got, was their two performances, and both of them were complete failures for me. So with all of that said, why do I kind of like Opus? It's that frickin' ending, man. And this is strictly a personal life bias, but despite the lackluster performance, Io Adebari's character struck such a particular chord with me in terms of her journalism and concerns with her work. You see, I don't like calling myself a writer because that's corny as fuck, but I do write things. I know because I write things very deeply. And to hear her insecurities about her lack of life experience to make her art exciting, ooh, it was such a particular little character arc that fueled the whole movie. I absolutely loved that, and the two-sided payoff at the end was kind of brilliant. I just related to it a little too hard for me to ignore the whole movie. But I will fully admit that without that character arc, this movie would rank quite a bit lower. It's a load-bearing Krusty the Clown poster kind of thing.
I wouldn't take it down if I were you. It's a load-bearing poster.
I can say with absolute certainty that The Roses is the greatest film ever made where Doctor Strange saves a whale. Anyways, this was a fun one, but it didn't do anything special. Did it need to though? Benedict Cabbage Patch.
Oh my god.
And Olivia Colman were both really good, and there's a level of poignancy to a lot of this as well. And I enjoy how West Coast the whole movie was. It was just a nice light watch. I guess my complaints about The Roses really stem from the fact that the director is
68 years old.
Now, I'm aware Jay Roach has a very robust comedy filmography, yes, but I can only imagine this would fall in the C tier of all of those, right? There are things here that feel so dated and empty, like they were waiting to be filled in by a vibrant sense of direction or, as Andy Samberg's character literally says in the movie, inertia. Like, I'm probably thinking too hard about it, but there was something missing in the periphery of this one that I couldn't just ignore. Like I said, it doesn't do anything special, but like I also said, it didn't really need to. It's not exactly Kino when you're watching a 2007 This Is Sparta style remix of Benedict Cumberbatch having a mental breakdown in the big 2025. You know, sometimes you just kind of have to sit back, pop a couple ambience, and just be like, I don't know. Question: how do y'all feel about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Personally, I think his ego tends to affect whatever projects he's in. He thinks he's all that in a bag of chips, when really all he does is start the ruination of the Fast and Furious series and say the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. is about to change. And I guess he can just announce world wars or something.
It's time for India versus Pakistan.
So ultimately, I went into the Smashing Machine with some expectations in mind, and while I don't think he transcended the role as well as he should have, I still think this was a decently interesting and worthwhile look into the life of an MMA fighter. I'm more interested in the filmmaking here than the plot, which honestly felt a little like reheated leftovers from other modern biopics like Priscilla, where the formula of show don't tell is expected by the filmmakers to run the whole 10 miles. But those Safdie brothers, I swear they're pretty— oh my goodness! Marty Supreme! Anyways, I found the domestic stuff with Emily Blunt quite interesting and sad. But I wonder if that's partially because Emily Blunt completely sells her role here. Like, y'all want to argue Emily Blunt has never had any cultural impact? And you're probably right, but that doesn't change the fact that I'd be crying the same way if I was around The Rock too. But then we cut back to MMA fighting, and I care significantly less. To me, The Smashing Machine finds a decent calibration between drama and filmmaking that leaves me enjoying it. Though I can't help but feel like in some ways we're treading water with this style of biopic. I'll still take something a little more artfully done like this than like Bohemian Rhapsody. Companion was the first movie I watched this year, and it was a pretty good way to start. It was made by a lot of the same people who made Barbarian, which was helpful to know. I knew Zach Cregger was working on a certain other movie and didn't have any hand with this, so I guess I didn't exactly know what to expect, all things considered. I knew only what the marketing told me, which let me in on a few clever moments early on, but I was floored at the second twist in the middle of the movie that changed the context of just about everything. There were some cool rug pulls I won't spoil here if you haven't seen it yet. I think what held Companion back for me, besides a pretty underwhelming ending, was that this concept didn't go to the insane levels I was kind of hoping it would. That teaser trailer I had seen leading up to its release was really vague and kind of creepy. It was a cool trailer, but then you watch the whole movie and it's like, I'm not sure if this is how it was marketed to me. I asked for the burger called the Ron's Creamy Surprise, and what do I get placed in front of me? The fucking sad European. Get the fuck out of here. Anyways, no, Companion was cool. Good performances and a neat concept. It just didn't really excel at anything or live up to the ideas the trailer kind of left me with. So, the Minecraft movie. This was definitely the Avengers Endgame of the year. What do I mean by that? Well, shit, this got everyone out to the theater. They'd been trying to— What was that? They'd been trying to produce this for so long, I'm happy that we got it at all, honestly. I wouldn't say I'm shocked that the movie is so incredibly formulaic, because I'm not. If you're gonna make a Minecraft movie, you really do have to play it incredibly safe and let the audience do the rest of the work. It's kinda like the game Minecraft in a way, except instead of exploring, building, farming, mining, the audience decided instead to— Don't say it. Please don't say it. It's not funny anymore. Please don't say it.
Chicken jockey.
I mean, shit. Theaters were popping. That's all I can really say, I guess. I'm determined to keep the art of movie theaters alive, even if it's my $24 semi-weekly contributions that do so. But I do think they played it a little too safe here. Like, really safe. It didn't cross any lines that a movie like, say, Barbie was willing to cross. It fell in this very flat, predictable median that didn't deliver anything special, honestly. But you know what? As a fan of the game and one of the millions who have sunk countless hours into it, even in infamous 2-week periods, I was still tickled by many things here. Honestly, to me, this is the only way you could have realistically executed this concept. At least the first movie. You know, you bend a couple rules, you exaggerate a couple things, but for the most part, it's all there. And it worked okay for me. I don't know. This would be a really weird thing to get upset about, but I can't imagine anyone above the age of like 14 being absolutely in love with it either. It's a serviceable tribute to the game with some funny and memorable moments. I don't really know what else to say. I wish it was more colorful. I wish Jennifer Coolidge was in it more. I can't say I'm terribly interested in what the sequel will offer, but that's a different can of worms.
Okay, sweetie, time for your government-mandated yearly Nick Cage movie.
Well, I don't think everything here worked. I still thought The Surfer was pretty effective and visually interesting. It kind of checks all the boxes for a story like this, so nothing was terribly shocking here. But with that said, I still thought the way it was done in terms of setting, cinematography, color grading, performances, and themes were cool. I tend to like movies that focus on post-masculinity, like just a disgusting and borderline ironic sense of masculinity. I'm always reminded of The Northman, or like American Psycho, I guess. And here we have an interesting angle to approach that from, and the theme really allows Nick Cage to shine in his role. He's finding really interesting parts to play as he's getting older. I think his performances in Dream Scenario and Longlegs were also pretty freaking good. And he's a very versatile and down-to-clown actor. So yeah, some good stuff here. But I feel like I could get some of these ideas from more interesting and potent sources. You like the way I said that? Potent. 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 I'm always hoping movies like this are willing to travel long distances, and while The Surfer was good, I'm left thinking what the big picture would be if it kept pushing its idea to further extremes. Also, rest in peace to Julian McMahon. He was fantastic in this. The Long Walk is a very solid idea from Stephen King, and I think this is a very solid film adaptation. It has a cool, diverse cast, and it approaches the concept in a way that's very simple and streamlined. I guess I have to give the original idea some credit because it's like, I think this is kind of hard to mess up. I like the different challenges the characters face, like the steep incline, shoes untied and breaking, muscles cramping, having to go potty, any of which could cost them their lives. The intensity was well measured, but the major thing holding The Long Walk back for me was most certainly the main character. Now, I mean to make this clear, Cooper Hoffman did a great job delivering the material he was given. What I'm about to say is purely based on the screenplay, and possibly Stephen King. I'm not sure, but I'll take any opportunity to dunk on that sex pervert. But was Ray really an appropriate choice to be our protagonist? He's constantly asking questions and starting shit and domineering conversations. I feel like in a story with a concept that's foreign and scary to us, we need a character who's maybe a little more reserved that we can kind of see ourselves in. I don't want to be attached to a main character who just fucking irritates me all the time. He was corny as hell, and I think the writing behind his dialogue was just embarrassing. I enjoyed David Johnson's character much more, and he's just such a talented and delightful actor that it made his character that much more engaging in comparison. And the ending with him was absolutely chef's kiss. I don't think it could have ended any other way. It was so wonderfully dark and satisfying seeing the most optimistic and loving character completely disenfranchised by the end. But there's something about the plot's execution leading up to that that did leave a little bit to be desired, I guess. Hey buddy.
Shut up. I have to lock in.
You know this movie was a work of fiction, right? The Long Walk isn't a real thing. You can stop.
Lord, you just don't understand the alpha male grind.
Holy crap! Anyways, yeah, The Long Walk was good. Sinners probably had the best word of mouth for a horror movie since Longlegs from last year, but I've learned my lesson. Don't get your hopes up too high now. And with that in mind, Sinners was a very pleasant surprise. There were a lot of really strong core elements, good performances, and tight editing that kept things moving and engaging. It had things that made the movie part of my brain tick constantly, which, well, kind of vague, I get it, is such a high compliment nowadays. However, when Sinners decides to cross the threshold into horror proper, a little over halfway through, it lost me. I really can't stand when action feels so stilted in instances like this, and a lot of the attention paid to the rich character work felt tossed aside for hackneyed spectacle that carried merely a fraction of the weight of the entire movie beforehand. Also, dude, the ending just wouldn't stop. Like, I get it, and I like the point of the ending, but I think they could have shaved a few minutes off and delivered that message much more succinctly. I still like the movie a lot, of course, but it's funny that once it actually tried embracing elements of horror, it felt like a betrayal to the entire movie up to that point. The last thing I'm gonna say about this: why the fuck were y'all analyzing this movie's performance so hard? Get off of Ryan Coogler's dick. I'm reading through all these projections and statistics at the time of release, and it's like, dude, this may be the most in-depth and semantical performance analysis of a movie I've seen since fucking Force Awakens or something. I don't know why so much of the journalism surrounding this was about, oh, when's it gonna break even? Oh, is this gonna be a flop? Like, I have a sneaking suspicion as to why the industry conversation surrounding Sinners was like that, but I'm not gonna say it out loud. We know I can't say that. it was a race thing. Like, am I wrong for thinking that? Every studio movie gets analyzed like this, sure, but in this case, it was such a prominent and public part of the conversation that it irritated me. All these percentages, all these demographics, all this performance data. But what struck me the hardest was how doubtful it all was. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Let's just say that when it performed well, all those old rich white men in charge of the Academy decided to flip-flop and overdo the praise, resulting in Sinners being the most nominated film in Oscars history. That's just to show y'all how late I am getting this video up. But it's like, the industry just can't seem to be normal about this movie. You've got what the bean counters and the insiders are saying, and you've got what the people watching the fucking movie are saying, and it just so happens that for once, I trust the audience. Look, Sinners is cool regardless of all of that. Ryan Coogler's a fantastic filmmaker, and this was an interesting idea. But I want everyone to keep in mind the way the industry looked down upon this film until it did well, and then the way it decided to virtue signal the fuck out of it in response to that. The idiots in charge will do anything to make you think they're on your side. Just remember that. Yeah, I bet you fuckers didn't think I'd be into this shit. I bet you didn't think I watch anime, did you, huh? Oh, don't look so shocked now. Anyways, I think the one season we've gotten of Chainsaw Man was pretty good. Until it suddenly wasn't. So, I was a bit skeptical of Rei's arc and how it would pick up after a very mixed bag of a first season. The anime, of course, has a wonderful and absurd sense of sadism to it, but the Rei's arc strikes such a wonderful tone and packages this story that could have made most of a season of the show into a 100-minute movie that packs a punch. I actually enjoy that Power wasn't present for any of this, because the focus on Denji, Rei's, Aki, and Angel was the most important. I enjoy these characters a lot here, and the first half of the movie setting up their arcs was my favorite stuff in the whole thing. There's this wonderful, lurking tension behind everything that kept me on my toes until all hell breaks loose about halfway through. But the second half of the movie is definitely where I start to have some problems. I was reading the reviews after the fact, and everyone was saying the action was so mind-numbing and bordering on being this psychedelic, euphoric cinematic experience, and you're gonna shit and fart yourself, and I'm just here like I literally had to close my eyes at multiple points. Did the animators even know what they were animating? I understood what everyone was fighting about, sure, but Rei's powers are so expansive and limitless that any kind of tracking or logistics in portraying that fight were just non-existent. It bothered me. I couldn't process most of the second half of the frickin' movie until things would take a breather for a second. I will say, the very ending was the only acceptable way for this arc to end. Makima may be one of the scariest characters in recent memory. Anyways, yes, the Rei's arc is well done until, in my opinion, it loses the plot a bit. I'm not here strictly for action, and when there is, I prefer to understand what the flip is going on. I don't know what y'all are on about. Definitely not my kind of movie, but I'm glad I watched this because this is actually a pretty slick, fun game of because this is actually a pretty slick, fun game of social espionage. It's basically about all the problems you'd think would come with coworkers fucking each other, who all happen to be in the most powerful top-secret branch of the government. While my cashew-sized brain had a hard time following everything that unfolded, I could follow for the most part and found it pretty engaging and fun. I also enjoy that every character gets to stay involved the whole time. While if I was more into the genre, I think maybe I'd get a bit more out of it, this was still a good watch. It's like a little one-off spy novella from the 90s, very contained and cool. Unfortunately, I'm not terribly surprised that it flopped as hard as it did because these kinds of classy spy movies just don't grab attention spans unless you have Tom Cruise fucking parachuting into an active volcano or some shit. I had no clue what to expect, but The Toxic Avenger rocked. It was made with so much adoration towards grindhouse cinema and felt very pure in that way. The color grading, a lot of the special effects, just the attitude of everything felt straight out of a banned comic book, and it was so cool. I love the sense of humor here as well, and getting to notice all the little subtle jokes in the background added so much to my viewing. And the best part was that the humor was very inclusive and not hateful towards anyone or anything besides pollution. Everything felt very thought out and electric, which considering this plot is what it should be. Peter Dinklage was so good. He just has such an interesting screen presence. He wasn't in the suit for the whole rest of the movie, correct, but even his voice work was pretty solid. I also really like Jacob Tremblay and Kevin Bacon. They just help round out a very solid cast. I will say, when the plot takes itself more seriously, I lost a little interest. I don't know. This was a fun thrill ride and not as obnoxious as a lot of edgy, over-the-top, self-aware, low-budget gore-fest movies tend to be nowadays. A great little alternative moment for superhero movies this year. Finally, Superman is brought back to a nice, simple place. Thank God. The strengths of this movie are super strong. I love David Corenswet as Soup and Nicholas Hoult as Lex. I think after the versions of their characters we've been subjected to for years, this is an incredibly refreshing change of pace. And before you Zack Snyder bros start speaking up, that's not to speak ill of Henry Cavill, who was very serviceable against the writing he was given. But I think this is just a much better equation, just all things considered. Gunn did a good job in making a proper attempt to start a new cinematic universe by making sure the movie stands solid on its own merit. I was originally worried that this movie would be too weird and feel too foreign to audiences, but I really like that Gunn understands this character and what he represents. And because of that, in a script that was obviously very recent, I also found Superman to be relevant and welcomed, even if it felt slightly superficial in that aspect. What holds me back from loving it is that it does kind of devolve to nauseating CGI action yet again by the end, a trend that superhero movies can't seem to really escape, but it wasn't as atrocious as previous examples of this pattern in superhero movies. And I also am slightly off-put by the way it looks and is filmed, and if the rest of this DCU is going to be filmed with these same techniques and principles in mind, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be a little turned off, but it's very, very nice all things considered. Yay! I watched this mostly because of the really intriguing word of mouth. Best Marvel movie since Endgame. So good that Marvel doesn't know what to do with it. The most refreshing superhero movie in a long time. And I was like, the fact that this word of mouth actually recognized that there was an issue made me interested. Not just that it was good, but like it was actively an improvement over everything the studio had been producing lately. Not the best, but better. Does that make sense? It didn't feel like there was much hyperbole, like it was pretty serious. But again, I have trauma from the long legs hype last year, so I knew to be cautious. Also, I love Florence Pugh, so I'd at least have one actor I'm familiar with in the fray. And y'all, it is really good. I feel kind of mean because I've been so anti-Marvel, anti-big franchise in these videos, and the first time this year I really took a chance, and it's so good. Now, I am aware that this is an exception, and it's not perfect. I don't think I can say I loved it or anything, but damn, when it hit so hard. Definitely one of the most right place, right time movies for me. The ideas of feeling purposeless, alone, reliving your shame, feeling lost, like, good God, it hit different. Florence Pugh and Louis Pullman just deliver some of the best performances of the year. That scene of them in Bob's shame room actually had me tearing up so hard. That was so powerful. And I was decently engaged by the plot when it wasn't sludgy, I guess. However, not even something as emotionally potent. You like how I said that? Potent. As Thunderbolts is immune to the isms of a superhero movie. There was some pretty distracting CGI here and there, some awkward action scenes and weird reaction shots and moments between the characters. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but the background and small movements and moments of all these frickin' movies make me cringe so hard. There's just something so untranslatable about the thrill of these plots. And yeah, it's that stuff that reminded me that I was watching an installment of the biggest corporate mega series in film history. But you know what? There was still such a beautiful heart behind this movie that I can disregard that. A little bit. Also, I know this has been a joke in the fandom for a while, but can you fucking imagine living in Earth 616, New York? Every week something horrible and traumatic happens. I did find it funny how a lot of the citizens just seemed used to these costumed weirdos roaming the streets on the daily. It's kind of like real life. Anyways, yeah, this is the Suicide Squad I wanted in 2016 that I didn't get. Yorgos Lanthimos. What a guy. My pretentious ass was very attracted to this one because of his direction, but also because of Ari Aster and Square Peg's production credits. And to Emma Stone, who's on a great streak lately, and Jesse Plemons, who I also really enjoy. This was a recipe for success. And it was. I really enjoyed the story, the performances, and perhaps above all, the audacity. I like how Lanthimos has begun to shed that incredibly clinical barrier from his early work, most notably Dogtooth and Killing of a Sacred Deer. I haven't seen Poor Things or Kinds of Kindness, but I assume they're a little more in line with Bugonia tonally, right? Regardless, when this one hit the road, I definitely felt like I was watching Misery, but with conspiracy theories and corporate culture. It was a delightful dynamic between Stone and Plemons, both of whom absolutely ate down in their roles. And a very particular shout out to Aidan Delby, who captured his character so perfectly that I was getting war flashbacks to public school. I was incredibly taken in by the characters and performances that when the story took a bit of an erratic pivot with about 20 minutes left, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. That's what keeps me from loving Bugonia, is that without spoiling anything, there's a shocking moment that ends with deaths and changes the core dynamic of the movie for the worse. And the ending didn't work as well as I hoped it would because of that. But even considering that, Bugonia was awesome and featured some of the best performances of the year. I just wish that final act had one last look over, an extra couple minutes to breathe, and a little more consideration as to how it was going to answer a few of the movie's questions.
Category 5. Me Love.
This was a very natural step for co-director Alex Garland coming off of Civil War, which was one of my favorite movies from last year. However, Warfare is way more technical and plain in the way it explores on-the-ground combat. There's virtually no central emotional core here outside of whether you care about this team and what little you get to learn about them. I mean all of that complimentary though, because once again, after Civil War, Garland and the real heart and soul of this project who deserves the praise, Ray Mendoza, managed to avoid taking a side here, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. In this movie, with this premise and this approach, it would have been a huge detriment to make anything glossy or quote-unquote cinematic, so to speak, out of this conflict. There's no backing score, there's no familiar archetypes or emotional core, like I said. There's just a very straightforward portrayal of this holdout and all the strategy, communication, and obstacles that come with that. I have a lot of respect for this movie's approach, and having a sister movie to Civil War rocks too. However, can a white boy go on a tangent real quick? I do think a lot of the controversy surrounding Warfare illustrates the contextual illiteracy of most moviegoers nowadays. I'm confused by the argument that Warfare is quote-unquote pro-war, a claim that's backed up by the fact that the movie never outwardly condemns the Iraq invasion and only focuses on the American soldiers stationed there. I don't exactly understand why some critics felt like the movie needed to blatantly take a side. I find that final image of the Iraqi family standing in their destroyed, blood-bathed home incredibly haunting and ultimately illustrates the stance the movie is taking. It never glamorizes the struggles of the American soldiers and oftentimes makes them seem incompetent and brutish. This movie is meant to show you very plainly the pointlessness of this war and ultimately what this particular firefight left this family of bystanders with. There was no heroism, just constant needlessness. Like, it was all there. Not a whole lot of attention was drawn to it, but a little subtlety goes a long way sometimes. I guess people were expecting a clip before the movie where Alex Garland fades in on screen and gives a speech like they do when they re-release old racist movies and cartoons where he says something like,
Hi, I'm Alex Garland. Before you watch my new feature-length film, Warfare, I just wanted to say that war is bad. War is really bad. And I'm sorry I made this movie about war. On some gang shit.
like, what? Are we that cooked that film critics can't read between the fucking lines anymore? One look over of Mendoza's interview with The Guardian when the movie came out tells you everything you need to know about his stance, which is the foundation the whole frickin' movie's built on. The only kernel of support I'll give this argument is that the footage of SEAL Team 5 on set was weird to show off during the credits. Not weird to do in terms of making the movie, but weird to insert in the credits alongside the horrifying pixelated faces of the real-life dead soldiers involved in this operation. I'll give you that much, but that doesn't deflate the entire movie up to that point very harshly for me. This is the most intense film I saw in 2025 and will stick with me for a very long time. I mean, it's not like Talk to Me were huge shoes to fill. I like that one just fine, but you always want to see improvements from directors, especially ones hot and new on the scene like the Raka Raka brothers. And damn! Of course, it always starts with the marketing. The trailers were incredibly cryptic, but so interesting you really had no freaking clue what they were trying to say or do. So you go in, and yes, there's a lot of Talk to Me's DNA in here, and you could make the criticism of, oh, another A24 horror movie dealing with grief. daring today, aren't we? Because honestly, yeah, to a degree, I felt... because honestly, yeah, to a degree, I felt that too, but I think if this is the last time, or maybe at least like one of the last times this kind of idea is executed, I'm completely okay with that. It won't be, so I guess I'll go fuck myself, but whatever. Bring Her Back just works so well as a script, a piece of direction, and a collection of performances. I also really enjoy and appreciate how depressing this movie is. Sally Hawkins, while perhaps not reaching to the depths of, say, Toni Collette or Florence Pugh in this type of role, did a really good job and understood the really complex game her character is playing. She commanded every scene she was in and was probably my favorite part of the whole movie. And this is where I gotta swing back on that whole Astro Awards thing. I'm a little less actively angry about it all this much time later, but I still think it's pretty fucking stupid that Indy, an organism incapable of understanding the psychological processes of acting and inhabiting a character, got the show's recognition over someone like Sally Hawkins, who was clearly willing to tap into some very dark and depressing places to take on her role here. I'm torn, because well yes, this was a stupid decision. I always have to remind myself not to take award shows so seriously. I just think in principle, giving this win to a dog following the directions of its owner versus an actual creative performance that involved thought and pain is rather insulting to the medium as a whole, but more specifically to the horror genre, which already experiences immense struggles when it comes to industry awards. This is just so beyond stupid. I'm sure Sally Hawkins doesn't really care, but I do. Anyways, Bring Her Back was a great next step for the Raka Raka brothers, almost a Smile 2 situation for me where they just beef up their debut in every conceivable way. Hopefully this is the end of the A24 grief horror phenomenon that we've been in for a few years now, because that's getting really old, I'm not gonna lie. But otherwise, this is a fantastic and extremely original and unique horror movie contribution for the year. Similarly to Barbarian, Krager's previous film, it feels like this one started as a writing exercise that spanned into a longer script. It starts with a hook that the marketing hinges on. A bunch of kids escape their homes at the same exact time and are nowhere to be found. So you start with that idea. Then where do you go? Where Barbarian's extension of its initial idea was kind of mid in my opinion, I think the results for Weapons are much better and more interesting. I love that the story is told in different interlocking pieces where the picture gradually becomes clearer the further you get along. But until then, you have no clue where any of this is going or how certain moments are relevant. And while not every plot point is satisfactory in the conclusion of the story, I think for the most part the entire conjunction is still great. This was a bizarre mystery that kept everyone guessing at every step along the way, and it was such a refreshing idea. But I think, and this is not a hot take, that the core of Weapons is most certainly Amy Madigan as Aunt Gladys. While she's not formally introduced until the last act-ish of the movie, the way Madigan commands every single second she's on screen is just impeccable. I know she's playing a creepy horror old witch lady on a surface level, but dude, she just took every aspect and nuance of this character, played it all so seriously, and flooded every scene with her presence. It's definitely one of the best performances of the year and the best part of the entire movie. I'm not sure if we need a Gladys prequel in all honesty, but I'll probably be there regardless if it means we get another performance like this. So to sum it up, Weapons was a wonderfully refreshing and intriguing moment this year, and I'm glad the good word of mouth brought people out to see this one. I hope Zach Krager gets his Resident Evil movie out of the way so we can see what original material he has to offer next. Although I'll still be watching that one too. He's definitely a part of the newest generation of promising horror filmmakers, and I'm so happy we got to see his first great step forward this year. Okay, so where does one start with Eddington? Where exactly do you begin dissecting this one? The performances? The story? The director? I guess I'll start with Beau is Afraid, Ari Aster's previous film. Let's use it as a baseline. If you didn't like Beau is Afraid, you're probably not gonna like this one. They're kind of sister films in a few ways, both starring Joaquin Phoenix, both exceptionally long, and both focus on the inevitability of greater powers eating us alive. And while I ultimately prefer Beau is Afraid to Eddington, which would be a hot take outside of the Ari Aster fanbase, I still think Eddington is excellent. This is an example of a director doing whatever he wants. Carte blanche, or blanche or whatever, which over the last few years has been a very mixed trend in the industry. It's not usually something that makes money, which matters more than anything to Hollywood, especially in a post-COVID world. So 2 financial bombs in a row probably doesn't bode well for Mr. Astor, but I'm obviously going to disregard that in this review. I just wanted to note how rare this is and applaud A24 for giving this kind of thing a chance yet again, even if this might be the last blank check movie Mr. Astor gets for a while. Or I could be wrong. I guess I don't really know. I just know that piggy bank with all the Hereditary and Midsummer money's gotta be starving now, right? Anyways, bitch, Eddington did not work well for me on the first watch, but I knew this would require at least 2 more viewings to feel any better, which it did. Joaquin Phoenix and Emma Stone have proven recently that they're down for some freak shit, so I get why they're here, but the rest of the cast being on board for this was quite delightful, and I don't think anyone gave a weak performance in the slightest. It helps that Astor went ballistic with this script, obviously aware of the absurdity of all of this and having fun with it until it's time to take it seriously. And that's another thing that this and Bo have in common, and something that I know is a bit of a turnoff for a lot of viewers, that being very jarring tonal shifts. For me, that kind of stuff is okay because I like it when movies make me uncomfortable. If I'm not feeling anything, why would I be watching that movie? And it just so happens that Astor wants us to feel weird, and based on the ending of this movie, scared. I love that Eddington stems from a real fear about the conquest of the tech industry and all the nefarious higher powers that it serves by taking advantage of our own division. It's really frightening because of how timely it all is. I have no clue when this screenplay was finished, but it somehow manages to capture the just pre-AI COVID hysteria, but folds a lot of prevalent current AI and tech fears into the narrative in a way that feels relevant to a disturbing degree. This is my favorite movie of the year because amidst all these characters, their individual motives, traits, and interactions, there's a very subtle evil permeating the entire narrative that only reveals itself in the final few minutes of the movie, and by then, it's too late. It's very much like Hereditary and, once again, Beau is Afraid. I think Astor is fantastic at writing stories like this, where there's something so sinister constantly lurking in the background that you don't really comprehend until the end. In the big 2025, this iteration of that idea worked so well. There's also certainly a discussion to be had about COVID here. I feel like this is the first quote-unquote major film that's bothered to really treat the pandemic as a major plot point, even if in this case it's more stage setting than anything else. I appreciate that Astor took the time to accurately record and reenact the hysteria that unfolded throughout 2020, and certain moments made me nauseous because they reminded me so acutely of those first few months of quarantine. I don't think the story would have been as effective if it felt inauthentic, but more broadly, does Eddington prove that we're ready to look back on COVID and laugh yet? Is there much to laugh about? I think he thinks so, at least in an absurdist kind of way. The second time I saw Eddington was, incidentally, with a bunch of people that I reckon were in the 50 to 70 range, and there were lots of laughs and gasps the entire movie. I thought that was interesting because it's like, huh, that was all really insane, wasn't it? Awful, and definitely sent us on a further downward trajectory as a society that we're still suffering the adverse effects of, but if you're the kind of person who's able to laugh in retrospect of things like that, then I think Eddington will speak to you. Maybe it's a privilege thing, maybe it's a mental illness thing, I'm not really sure. But Eddington really made me think about how fast time and society are moving lately. We're constantly creating and advancing new technology, and we've never been more divided and ripe for the taking of larger corporations and powers who want to eat us all alive. The entire ending hit way too different, and this alarming idea told by this alarming man in this alarming movie propels it to my #1 spot this year. I can see how on a surface level this might come off as more strange Ari Aster A24 nonsense, but just like Beau is Afraid, if you just roll with it and choose to dig deeper and pick out all the pieces in place, I think there's some incredibly rich filmmaking and storytelling going on here. He's 4 for 4, y'all. I'm ready for more.
That's all I got today. Well, that was 2025 in the year, that was 2025 in films. Pretty magical if you ask me. A lot of stuff to like, a lot of stuff to dislike. Most of it kind of, you know, it's a bell curve. Here's the 2026, I guess. Alright, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I literally don't know what to say. I hope 2026 is an absolutely magical year full of wonderful movies and wonderful moments. And that sounds like I'm being sarcastic or facetious, but like, can't a white guy be sincere every so often? Catch you in the next one.
Kissing my Swedish boy over FaceTime. Oh no, opening up, make me a headlight boots. That's my ego boost.